Hi, everybody. I am Dr. Keri Nevin of Heartlight Psychological Services, and I had an idea to interview people who are doing amazing work with supporting people who are struggling with mental issues, and these are the people that are supporting mental well-being. And I found a gem. I found Mr. Ray Rapaglia. And so I'm going to speak a little bit, Ray, about who you are and a little bit about what you do before we let you take it away. Ray Rapaglia is the founder and executive director of James Club Recovery Residences, which, by the way, are certified residences located in Broward County, Florida. And I understand you just opened up a new space in Oakland, Florida. And the residences are highly structured, long-term residences for men. And then there is a separate space for women who are challenged by substance abuse. These residences are certified by FARR, which is the Florida Association of Recovery Residences, and they've been serving the recovery community since September of 2016. And the goal of the James Club is to produce sustained sobriety and a law-abiding, purposeful life. I really appreciate that word, purposeful. We're going to talk more about that. The James Club also offers a 4-phase program that helps individuals overcome or make positive progress with any addiction or mental health issue. And so, that's important to me. And this is really right. This explains in a nutshell why I wanted to talk with you. And by the way, I understand that today is a very special day for you. Can you tell our viewers why that might be?
Yes, and thank you, Doctor, for allowing me to come on this important broadcast. Today, June 23rd, is my sobriety date. It's the most important day in my life. June 23rd, 2010 was when I got clean and sober. And that means that today is 13 years without a drink or a drug.
Congratulations, Ray. That is something to shout from the rooftops and to be so proud of and to feel like, wow, I'm doing it and I can be an inspiration to other people. That's who I see you to be.
Thank you so much. I got a tiny bit emotional just now, and I don't usually get emotional, but I remember the day before that I got cleaned. I lived under a tree in the Pompano Beach Cemetery. I was homeless for one day and one night. I struggled with serious mental health issues, depression, bipolar, borderline schizophrenia, and attention deficit disorder. I tried every pill known to mankind, and I utilized substances to put a Band-Aid on my problems. And I thought that drugs and alcohol was my solution to my problems, and it turned out to be my problem because it didn't work for me anymore. And after using drugs and alcohol for 34 years, on June 22nd, 2010, I had a rope in my backpack with a perfectly tied noose, and I was planning out my own suicide. I was trying to decide what branch to hang myself from. I promised myself that if I ever became homeless, I would take my own life, and I planned out my suicide for 4 months. And then this man named Michael, for no reason at all, he didn't want anything in return from me. He helped me, and now I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. So I try to show my gratitude to Michael and my higher power by paying it forward and helping others.
I mean, what a story. And so many questions sort of like popcorn going off in my head. So I understand you told me that you have a history as a Wall Street broker, right? Can you talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what set the stage for you to want to, as I see it, almost self-medicate?
Well, it's an interesting question because I've asked myself that as well. And I don't know if it's a specific answer. I think it's a myriad of different reasons. The environment that I was in, I started on Wall Street in 1979 when I was 17. And at age 26, I became the youngest elected senior vice president at Payne Weber. I became the feature story in the Hurt on the Street column in the Wall Street Journal. I was a very well-known stockbroker. And then simultaneously, when I was a senior vice president for Shearson Lehman Brothers, I opened up a big nightclub in Manhattan on 24th Street and Fifth Avenue that I was the main owner for 4 years. So with that, I got introduced to cocaine. I was hanging with the wrong people. I didn't realize it was a progressive disease, and my alcohol consumption got worse and worse. And then when the opioid epidemic started to hit, I became addicted to pain pills. So how it all happened, I don't know if I was born with the gene, if I acquired it, if it's my personality, but I couldn't control my substance abuse anymore. I couldn't become a moderate drinker. So it just got worse and worse, and I ended up losing all of my money. I became incredibly in debt. My wife divorced me. My children were out of my life. And my Sicilian father told me to lose his phone number. I was no longer his son. So I wasn't living anymore. I was just existing. I remembered the pain. I didn't want to wake up in the morning. I was pleading with God to give me a heart attack or a stroke. I was hopeless. Can you imagine that? A man or a woman without any hope. So to be where I'm at today, with 13 years clean and sober today, I've never been happier in my life. I go to bed at night. I can't wait to wake up the next morning. I jump out of bed in the morning. I can't wait to start my day. I get on my knees. I ask God to please send me people that I can help. Because I found what the secret to happiness is. And I never knew this. And I have a feeling you do. And that's to have purpose.
Gosh, you just read my mind, Ray. Just read my mind. So my next question, it says on your website, you highlight the goal of the houses, the residences, to, quote, produce sustained sobriety and a law-abiding, purposeful life. Purposeful life. You go on to say, we are a diverse community open to all faiths. Our residents are involved in many altruistic acts, some of which include feeding the homeless, volunteering at soup kitchens, grocery giveaways, and doing local acts of service for the community. So that word purposeful really stood out to me. How does a focus on conscious purpose contribute to the healing that occurs in the residence of your homes?
I think it's everything. Many of us are addicts, okay, or alcoholics, and I'm not embarrassed to categorize myself, but I do preface it by using the word recovered. We're recovered alcohol. And with that said, many of us have big egos. I don't know if you can tell, I'm from New York. I speak pretty quickly, and I love people. But prior to me having my calling to have the purpose I currently have, it was all about materialism. I'm living proof that money doesn't buy happiness. I had it all. I was making a 6-digit monthly income. I traveled by limousine. I was dating celebrities. I was hanging out with some of the most prominent people in New York City. But deep down inside, I wasn't happy. So I believe I got humbled. And many of us alcoholics, recovered alcoholics, we have very low self-esteem. Mm-hmm. So I believe that purpose of helping people, doing volunteer work, feeding the homeless, working at soup kitchens is so important to a recovery. But then to have a simple plan, which it says in the AA preamble, that our purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. We've had 3,000 men come through the doors, and women, at James Club Recovery since we've opened. And it's been the most amazing experience. By helping them, it's produced a joy that I never dreamed possible, but there's a catch. You have to have a correct intention in all things.
Wow.
And James Club prioritized helping people over making money.
Wow. I mean, it's obviously something that you live and something that you teach. one question that popped to my mind while you were speaking is during that time of excess, when you were living really, really large, was there ever a time that you heard a voice inside of you asking, is this the right thing? Was there ever an awareness, ever a consciousness that, am I sure this is right?
Great question, because yes, and perhaps I asked it in a different manner because I couldn't understand why all of that success didn't produce happiness.
Were you aware? Were you aware at that time that you were searching for happiness?
No, I thought that my worth would be how big my condominium was, how fancy my car was, how many watches I had, how big my bank account was. You know, I didn't realize that there was so much more. And for me, it was because I didn't have a higher power in my life. It was all about me. And that's why, as you read, the James Club is a diverse community open to all faiths. We're all about doing the right thing. Some of us call our higher power, like I do, God. Some could call it higher power. We have all different types of people here. But we have a brotherhood, a sisterhood with one commonality, and that is we want to turn our lives around, and we want to have that purpose that you spoke of. So no, I never really looked at it the same way, because keep in mind, I used drugs and alcohol for 30, 40 years straight, and I was hardcore. At the end, I was drunk at 8 o'clock in the morning. I faked a back surgery, Dr. Keri. I let a doctor cut my stomach open and put a titanium disc in my spine in the early 1990s because he wouldn't continue to prescribe me OxyContin unless he said, hypothetically, you had back surgery. He said to me, but I don't think you're a candidate for back surgery. I said, I think you're wrong, doctor. And I faked it. I went through with the back surgery. That's how powerful this disease is. And then it got to a point where I couldn't live with alcohol or without alcohol. And then I heard about this concept that they utilized in 1935 when AA, the greatest self-help group in the history of mankind, started. They had a 75% success rate. You have any idea what the success rate is nowadays for men like me in places like mine?
No, we don't.
Less than 10%.
Less than 10%.
That's why there's so many overdose deaths. That's why so many men and women go through what I call the vicious cycle or just give up. So I found it fascinating what they did in 1935. And I emulated that original genius in my personal program of recovery, and I've never relapsed since on what's called a one white chipper, which is relatively rare. Doesn't make me any better. But if us alcoholics, when we stop drinking or drugging, if we don't fill up that void with something meaningful, something productive, we'll relapse. And for me, I found the greatest secret in the world, the absolute road to happiness is for a guy like me to utilize what I've been through to help other individuals that have been through similar experiences, because we can relate. And with that, it's produced so much inner peace. And for me, love. 7 years ago, I met the most amazing woman. She's not in recovery. I don't know how she puts up with me. And Tracy runs our administration here. She's from the country of Belize. She's the most honest woman I've ever met in my life. She's never tried a drug. And together, we really put together something powerful here at James Club because we're in the process of becoming evidence-based. Wow. We created this strategy called the 7 S's to Success. And with our higher level of care program, because we're now more than just recovery residences, we utilize the methodology that worked back in 1935 to produce that 75% success rate in a concept we call the Pay It Forward program. And it's really been remarkable how many of our men and women are staying clean and sober, and above all, addressing their mental health issues. Because as you probably know, Dr. Keri, substance abuse and mental health issues sometimes go hand in hand.
Yes, correct, correct. A word just popped into my head that I think connects to purposeful, and that is connection. And from my perspective, you're looking to fill some part of you up when you don't have connection to self, connection to higher power. Something's missing. And I think we do this thing where we go outside of ourselves to think, I'm going to just fill this up, whether it's drugs, whether it's relationships with other people. You mentioned the word intention, and intention is everything. I once heard someone say, listen, it was the concept of sin. And somebody said, listen, you can sin against a blade of grass if that's your intention. So intention is truly a part of the formula, right? As I'm hearing you talk and speak about this. And I think that what you're doing, Ray, is that you are waking people up to remembering that they can make a decision, that they can make a choice, that they have power, because when our biochemistry shifts into fight or flight, we bounce out of remembering, oh, we've got choices. And that's elegantly suited to run away from a tiger. But what happens when someone disapproves of you? Or when you get, you miss a payment, a bill payment, or you become criticized? You go into fight or flight. And then we get bounced out of recalling, oh, wait, we do have choices with how we're going to deal with this. We can make it worse, or we can make it better. And I think that people also forget about their worthiness, about who they are, about how important they are. I just had someone say to me, do you know what the chances are of you being here on earth at this time? Just you, unique you, as you are. And no one was willing to guess. I said, I don't know, 1 in a trillion. And she said, 1 in 364 trillion. I mean, it was some crazy number. And the whole point is that you've already won the lottery. You are here. You are important. And I think that message is something that you and James Club embody. That's what I see.
Well, thank you for sharing all that, and I completely agree. What came to my mind when you were speaking is that for someone like me, and for the lack of a better phrase, you, my wife, and many others that I know, we'll call you normal people.
I don't know if I do that, Ray.
My class and my brothers and sisters, we're all kindred. We come from the same tribe. We're a little bit different. We're very sensitive. We overreact. We can be traumatic. I shared with you about the big ego and low self-esteem. But the one commonality for us to get better, to have that purpose, is we need to work a correct program of recovery. And that's what we teach at James Club. That's what I became a student of. I've been Broward Recovery Man of the Year. I've been featured on Intervention. I've been on ABC, NBC. I've been the Shamrim Man of the Year, the nation's largest Jewish law enforcement society. I'm the first non-Jew to ever win. I've been Humanitarian of the Year. I've been sent up to Capitol Hill to share my testimony. And not to sound falsely humble, I'm nothing special. I got honest for the first time in my life. I was a telemarketing stockbroker for 24 years. You think I ever lied over the phone? So we didn't consider it that way. We just thought we were being aggressive and we were trying to close the sale. I never crossed the line, but I did what I did to close the sale. And now I sell hope. And that's why to work a correct program of recovery is key. And everything you said is part of that process. That's why it's a long-term program here at James Club Recovery, because it takes time. And the big focus, and we can talk on this one subject, I'm sure, for a while, ready for this, is change. Change is the key. What do you call, Dr. Keri? A drunken horse thief if you take away the alcohol?
Just a horse thief.
He's still a horse thief. So just because Raymond put down the drugs and alcohol They weren't going to call me St. Raymond 13 years ago. It's been a process in recovery to become a better man. My goal is to be a better and better husband, a better and better father to my 5 children, a better friend, a better servant leader here at James Club Recovery. So how do I do that? I have to work on my character defects. And I practice the opposite virtues to try to become a better person. So that's what recovery is about for us. It's about growing in the likeness and image of our Creator. It's about being an honest person. It's about handling situations correctly. Like you said, in the past, if I was criticized, what? And now I welcome it. Tell me how I can do better. Tell me what I did wrong. I try to keep my ego out of it. I'm trying to become the best man I could. And quite frankly, right now where I'm at, I had an idea recently. And if this is the one thing that this show today shares with the world, is we must get as a FARR certified facility. FARR stands for, as you said, Florida Association of Recovery Residences. I'm very proud that I'm on the board of directors of FARR. Integrity is very important to us at James Club. We must get 50 to 75 calls every week of men and women that want to come into a facility like ours, a quality recovery house, but they have absolutely no money. And this is happening throughout Broward County and up in Palm Beach County. I'm sure the same down in Dade County. We're averaging 3 to 5 overdose deaths a day. I've heard moms howling, crying, losing their 25-year-old son. It's so sad when there's a solution. So we, through our nonprofit James Club Foundation, we have 5 retired judges on our board. We have this incredible attorney who just came on our board named Ken Padowitz.
He is quite incredible.
and
Just for those of you who don't know, is my brother-in-law.
Well, we have just an amazing board of directors of 19 men and women, city commissioners, mayors, attorneys. It's just really wonderful. All like-minded people to support this Pay It Forward program. It's going to be introduced in August, the first 3-month housing scholarship. Wow. Individuals that want to come into a quality program but have no money. It'll include food. It'll include clothing, toiletries, a back-to-school program, employment placement services, mental health issues. We have an amazing man who works with us here at James Club. He co-runs our mentoring program, which is a higher level of care program that we offer. And Chief Ken Kronheim, the former BSO district fire chief, co-runs the mentoring program, and he's an amazing mental health therapist. He's going to offer services to the Pay It Forward clients as well. So we're going to provide housing for individuals, but there's going to be a very important catch. They have to agree to work the program that we teach. The concept that we're in the process of becoming evidence-based, that we believe will result in more people staying clean and sober, so that we make a difference with that fancy term, the recidivism rate. We want to lower homelessness. We want to reduce overdose deaths, and we want to provide a solution for the opioid and fentanyl epidemic. So the Pay It Forward program will be introduced shortly to the community, and we're very excited about that.
No, as much as we can see you creating a community, this sounds like a movement to me. That's what it sounds like. What you're doing in addition to creating community, you're wanting this to be a movement because you have demonstrated answers to the question around how do we help recover people who struggle with substance abuse.
And true, doctor, because again, when I mentioned earlier about a correct program of recovery, there's lots of places like mine. Many places you stay, you go to a few AA meetings, but the success rate is actually 3%. Well documented in 1935 when AA first started, they had a 75% success rate. Their secret, in my opinion, was great sponsorship and taking individuals through the 12 steps and then them immediately taking others through the 12 steps. So I found it so fascinating what they did in 1935 that I spent 2 years of my life studying and replicating it in my personal program of recovery. And I simplified it. We call it the 7 S's to success. So we have a curriculum here and we teach. And yes, we spent 7 years in September. We'll be open 7 years to establish the brand. My sponsor, as I shared with you, is Father Eric. He's a Catholic priest in New York. He's got 3 master's degrees and a PhD. He's my little brother. He caught the brains in the family. And Eric wants me to take baby steps. So we went really slow to establish protocol, our program, our brand. Now we just had our first board meeting for the nonprofit, and we're going to be introducing at our third meeting in July 10th will be the third meeting, the Pay It Forward program. And yes, I want this to be a national solution to a really significant problem that sometimes we don't talk about enough. I don't know a family in America, and tell me if I'm wrong, that doesn't have one person in their family that struggles with substance abuse or mental health issues.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so what you're really talking about is covering the whole person, every aspect of the person, mind, body, spirit, as I understand it.
Well, it's amazing you said that. That's what I call my program, mind, body, and soul. Yes. So it's just so important to be positive, because nothing great can be accomplished without inspiration. I was actually a Wall Street sales trainer for a while. I train brokers. I have a lot of stories. I try to inspire and motivate. For some reason, I have a lot of energy. I don't know why. It continues. I'm 61 years old. We've been open almost 7 years, and I've never taken one day off. I work 7 days a week, and it's not work for me. It's the most amazing journey, the most amazing thing that a guy like me has ever done in his life. So yes, we want to make a difference, Dr. Keri. And above all, we want to save lives. And that's why I agreed to do this interview, because this is not about me. This is about us as a community helping others and giving them hope.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I have this question that I really love that I'm going to ask you. When you consider the man that you've become and all the wisdom and knowledge that you've acquired, what counsel would you give the young man you were who was struggling? What would you want your younger self to know?
Okay. The immediate answer that came to my mind is the epiphany that took me almost 13 years to conclude in sobriety. See, and I don't want to sound like I'm being comical or falsely humble, but there was a time when I actually thought I was smart. Okay. I realized I'm not that smart. So what I would tell that young man is base all of your determinations, conclusions, opinions, and judgments, not on what you think or feel. Base your determinations, opinions, judgments, and conclusions on your actual experience. What you see, what you hear, what you've been through. And I believe that's the definition of wisdom. So as a younger person, I thought I knew it all. I was very prideful. I didn't know what the word humility meant. That's the number one virtue that produces joy and happiness and keeps men and women like me clean and sober. And most of us don't even know what it is. It's keeping it real. It's an honest facing of facts. I'm no longer a big shot stockbroker. I'm just a recovered alcoholic trying to grow in the likeness and image of my creator, trying to be a good dad, a good father, a good husband, and good at what I do in a business that sometimes people prioritize the wrong thing. Because my population is very, very vulnerable. That's why I refuse to take any insurance. We're just a small recovery house that we're trying to make a difference, that came up with a concept that I believe will result in more people staying clean and sober, addressing mental health issues, and becoming, like you said, purposeful citizens.
Yeah. Well, as I was reading about your staff, there was one gentleman that stood out in his description of what he does at James Club, and it's your office manager, Michael Jokubauskas. I'm hoping I'm not butchering his name.
You pronounced it very well.
Okay, and so just for our viewers, I want you to know what Michael does. This is his job description. Michael is our office manager and intake specialist. One of his responsibilities is to do initial assessments and make our new guests feel comfortable and loved. And I have to tell you, I have never seen a job description like that before. And it just struck me, I felt it right in my heart. And I thought, oh, yeah, that has to be, the main thing when people are coming in and they're so vulnerable and they're so beaten down and they're so hopeless. And to have a loving presence that is receptive to them is that's miraculous, in my opinion.
And I think it's the most important aspect of our facility, because my conclusion, what I've seen, not what I think, is with programs like mine, and there's different types. There's sober living like we are, detox, there's treatment, there's different types of programs. But for anyone trying to recover from an addiction, a vulnerable person, like you said, there's only two ways, Dr. Keri, to manage and motivate facilities like mine. Two ways only: love or fear. Most places choose fear. Fear doesn't work good with vulnerable people. Fear wouldn't work well with me. The number one characteristic of an alcoholic is defiance. So we connect, like you said, because I can relate to someone. I'm not going to judge the person. I lived under a tree. I weighed 137 pounds, or 200 now. I was eating out of garbage pails that day on Monday, June 21st, 2010. So when someone sits in front of me and I speak with that person and he's crying or she's crying and she has or he has only 4 or 5 days clean and is filled with guilt and shame and regret, I can relate to that because that was me. And I try to explain to just take it one day at a time. And the first bit of advice I always give to a new client is forgive yourself. Put the bat down.
Put the bat down. It's a really good suggestion.
And then I want to
shut down. Love it.
And then one other important fact that I like to share with you, and I hope this helps one person. With the 3,000 or so people that have come through our doors, I've asked them all the same question. And every single one of them gave me the same answer. And that's when it dawned on me. I asked them, did you do your 12 steps quickly? You could do 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, all great programs. So I asked, did you do your 12 steps quickly and then immediately start sponsoring other individuals and take them through the 12 steps? Guess how many of them said no to that question? Every single one of them. Not one person ever said yes. It's the entire concept what they did in 1935. So we at James Club Recovery, in our certified mentoring program, a higher level of care program, we take people through the 12 steps within 30 days. And on the 31st day, we assign them sponsees for them to take through the 12 steps. So that produces the joy for them. That produces the purpose. And that results in sustained sobriety. And that's what we do a little different. And now with the Pay It Forward program, I think we might end up having, or at least this is what the board is saying, we might end up having 500 beds to accommodate all these people. And with that, those 500 people will work with our existing clients and the new clients that come into the 4-phase program and the mentoring program, and they will be taken through the 12 steps so that they eventually can take others through the 12 steps. And for a guy who used to think the 12 steps when I first came in, I was like, come on, this is an alt. I'm Ray Rapaglia. I don't need no 12 steps. I just need, like, some money, get an apartment, a good job, and get out of here. Because when I was under the tree for one day and one night, as we shared, Michael, who didn't want anything from me in return, brought me into a recovery house. I had no money. I had no shoes and socks. He brought me in and they welcomed me with open arms. And I stayed there for 14 months. And it was probably one of the funniest. I have like 3 good stories if I can share. I'll give you a short version, okay? The one is how I got into the rooms. See, it was Monday, June 21st, 2010, and I promised myself if I ever became homeless, I would take my own life.
Yeah.
I traveled for 4 months with a perfectly tied noose in my back. And finally, on that day, my dad wouldn't help me anymore. I had no place to go after living in 2 homeless shelters for almost 2 years of my life. And I met this guy on the street, and his name was Jimmy. And he told me he was going to show me how to be homeless in Broward County. I said, okay, because I didn't know how to be homeless. I was never homeless my whole life. I grew up in a middle-class family in Long Island, New York. My dad owned a little pizzeria. My mom and dad were married for 40 years, a good family. And with that, and I'm the only one who struggled like bad with substance abuse. But with that said, Jimmy told me he was going to show me where we get free food in Broward County. He was going to show me where we shower. He was going to show me how we're going to hustle for beer money. I start saying to myself, wow, maybe this homeless stuff won't be so bad. In my sick mind, Dr. Keri, I even said to myself, maybe I'll even meet a nice homeless girl.
Oh my gosh.
It was terrible. It was brutal.
Yeah.
We were on the streets of Pompano, and he told me when the sun comes down, we're going to go into Pompano Beach Cemetery. We're going to sleep under this one beautiful tree. And there was a gravestone there that was dedicated to African-American soldiers that had no one to bury them. It was a beautiful, beautiful setting. And I slept under the tree with Jimmy. I was on top of roots, and I had no pillow or comforter. I remember my mother, God rest her soul, telling me, be grateful that you have a roof over your head. I didn't know what it meant to that night.
Yeah.
And there I was under the tree. I couldn't sleep, but I had a bottle of scotch. And I was drinking the scotch, trying to fall asleep, and I couldn't sleep. And I looked next to me, and Jimmy's sleeping like a baby. 12 o'clock at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. I can't sleep. And all of a sudden, I fall asleep for 5 minutes, and something wakes me up in the cemetery. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't the police. Guess what it was?
I don't know.
The sprinkler system.
Oh my gosh.
This wasn't the kind of sprinkler system they water lawns with in South Florida. This was the kind of sprinkler system they wash elephants with.
Oh
So I
my
get
God.
hit with the sprinkler system. I'm like, oh my God. And I stand up and I look up to the sky and I say, God, please help me. Please forgive me. I never said those words. I turned around and went back to the tree. And guess what Jimmy was still doing during this whole process? Sleeping.
You
So I
got through the sprinkler system and everything.
did not care. So I start kicking him. I said, Jimmy, wake up. I can't take this homeless stuff anymore. Jimmy, wake up. I'm really hanging myself. And he opens his eyes and he goes, dude, take it easy. And I keep on kicking him. I'm like, no, I can't do this anymore. And he looks up at me. He goes, dude, I know what we need. I go, what do we need, Jimmy? He goes, we need 2 cigarettes. Back then I smoked. And we were looking on the floor for other people's cigarettes. They're called shorts. So Jimmy said to me, why don't you go across the street to the Pompano Beach Group AA meeting at 6:30? I'm like, what? Sorry?
He knew it. He knew when it was.
Well, I'll tell you why. I said, what's an AA meeting? I had to be the only guy in Broward County at 48 years old, didn't know what AA was.
Yeah.
So he said to me, don't worry what AA is. Just go across the street to the Pompano Beach 6:30 a.m. AA meeting because they all smoke cigarettes. I'm like, wow. So I cross Federal Highway. I'm soaking wet. I weigh 137 pounds. I have no shoes, no socks. And I go in the back of the brews room and I see the circle and the triangle Jimmy told me to look for. And I see the most beautiful man I've ever seen in my life. His name was Michael. His eyes were sparkling. He was fresh-skinned and glowing. He was laughing. He was happy. It's all I ever wanted. All that money that I made on Wall Street didn't make me happy. And he looked at me and he goes, dude, what happened to you? And he shaved for a month and soaked and wet, no shoes, no socks. I go, no, what happened to me is not important. Can I please have 2 cigarettes? So he gives me the 2 cigarettes. He says, why don't you come into this AA meeting? I said, nah, my friend told me a little bit about it. I don't need an AA meeting. Just 2 cigarettes, please. And you know how he closed me? I'll never forget it. He said, why don't you come into this AA meeting? We got coffee.
The coffee.
Wow. Coffee sounds like a good idea. I'm going to try not to cry because I'm a little emotional.
Yeah.
On the morning of Tuesday, June 22nd, 2010, picked up one and only lunch. And I haven't found it necessary to have a drink or a drug since. It's been remarkable. But 5 years later, Dr. Kerri, I was lonely. I addressed my mental health issues. I wasn't taking all these pills that I was taking. I was on Lexapro and Paxil and Wellbutrin, all these things that there were side effects, and they helped a little bit, with counseling, and that's all important stuff, of course. But what really became my panacea was helping people and working this correct program of recovery, and then most importantly, having a right relationship with my higher power. And that's where intention comes in. So after 5 years, my second story that I like to tell you, 5 years, I told my sponsor, this amazing man named Stevie B. And I said to Stevie, I got to talk to you. I think I'm ready. He goes, I know what you're going to say. You want to meet somebody right now, don't you? I go, yeah. I said to him, I'd like to meet somebody and get married. Because my wife had divorced me. I was a bad husband while I was using drugs. And we had 2 kids together. Mm-hmm. And my kids came back in my life. But now I'm in a recovery house. I got clean. And then I had a little apartment. And after 5 years, Stevie said to me, well, I think you're ready to meet someone. Because here's what I want you to do. Because I want you to get on your knees and ask God to send you one of his daughters. Wow, I never heard that one before. I've tried Match.com, Plenty of Fish. I tried meeting a girl in Publix. Anything I could try, nothing worked.
Nothing worked.
So I get on my knees the next morning and I pray and I ask God to send me one of his daughters. And at the same time, I asked my mother, who never got to see me clean. She passed in 1997. I said, Mom, if you're up there, can you talk to God and maybe he could hook me up with a nice girl? I kid you not, Dr. Kerri, the very next day in the gym, I see this beautiful woman. She smiles at me. And I go over to her thinking I'm cool. And I ask her to have dinner. And guess what she says? No.
You said no.
No, she said to me. About a week later, I see her in the gym a second time. And I think, well, you know what? Let me try again. She smiles. And instead of dinner, I figured during the day it would be less intimidating. I asked her to have lunch. And guess what she says? No.
No.
I can't believe I didn't give up. A couple of days later, she smiles at me a third time. I go over to her a third. I don't know where these words came from. I said, listen, I know you don't want to have dinner or lunch with me, but would you go to church with me on Sunday? She goes, wow, no man has ever asked me that before. I'll go to church with you. When the service was over, I asked her a question. I almost fell off the chair. I said, by the way, when's your birthday? What? July 8th. That was my mother's birthday.
Oh my gosh.
We're in an age of miracles. Men and women like me in recovery are miracles. We should be dead. It's just really so incredible the experiences that we have and the importance, like this show today, of telling our stories to give that hope. Because there I was getting clean, but gave up my best friend, alcohol and drugs. And I still had my mental health stuff. And I didn't realize what my solution was. It's called a spiritual awakening. This indescribable inner joy where you're happier than you've ever been. You don't regret the past. You don't fear the future. You live in the now. But I didn't understand any of that. But I remember, as I shared with you, when I spoke to God that day under the tree, and I said, please forgive me. I didn't realize when I would have my spiritual awakening, because there was this one man I wouldn't forgive. He replaced me, Dr. Keri. This nice Trinidadian woman divorced me because of my substance abuse, and she remarried this Jamaican man named Marlon. I didn't see my own children for 3 years. I cried all the time. I was depressed. Believe it or not, I never talked. I was struggling with so many mental health issues. I didn't think I'd ever get better. And my kids were out of my life for 3 years. And finally, they came back in my life. And every other weekend, I would go see them now with the arrangement. And the first weekend, I saw my 8-year-old boy, Ray. He runs over to me. Hadn't seen me in 3 years. Daddy, Daddy. And I give him a big hug. And he goes, guess what, Daddy? Guess what? I go, what, Ray? Ray, what? He goes, I got 2 daddies now. I go, what? He goes, Mommy's friend lets me call him Daddy. I hated this man, Marlon. But I never met him. But I just had a resentment like you wouldn't believe. I didn't realize how resentments are the #1 offender for people like us. And that self-resentments, when we're filled with guilt and shame, will take us out. I didn't realize that if I didn't get rid of that resentment, I would drink again. I never met him to this one day. I pull up at my house, and there was Marlon about 50 yards away. And he looks at me and he says, you must be Ray. And I look up, I kind of put my head like this, and I went, you must be Marlon. And then it was like out of a movie, Dr. Keri. We ran at each other fast and hard. Next thing you know, we out. And he started to cry. He said to me, thank you for being a good father to my stepchildren. And I said, thank you for being a good father, a good stepfather to my children. And at that moment in time, I forgave him. And all anger, all bitterness, all jealousy left my veins. And I started my spiritual work. Yeah, so these are all part of my stories and part of the experience of recovery and why I do what I do with James.
I mean, it's hard to distill the success that you've had into just one thing. There's so many elements that you brought to this conversation today. I feel like you're weaving this beautiful tapestry of how to envelop everyone who believes that they're worth being enveloped, because if they show up, there is that light inside of them. There is something that's telling them, maybe this is for me too. And
So I'm hoping, Doctor. And I on purpose saved my best story for last. Or whatever you want to talk about. But truly, I meant what I said before, it's not about me. It's about giving hope. Because I was hopeless. I didn't even know recovery houses existed. I didn't even know about 12 steps. I didn't know about a right relationship with a higher power. I didn't know if I could ever feel good again. All I know is I could not stop doing drugs. It got worse and worse and worse. And my only hope, the only thing that gave me joy, imagine this, was the thought of taking my own life. It was the only thing that produced any happiness. And now it's beyond remarkable what's happened in my life. And it almost sounds like I'm boasting, but it's not. It's not about me. It's about doing the right thing, being honest, working hard, helping others, trying to change and become a better person. And then these blessings that you just spoke about appear. For example, my father, he was this little Italian man. He didn't talk to me for 3 years. My dad couldn't understand addiction. He never had a drink in his life. And God, in my experience, is a God of restoration. I didn't realize that. So here we were. We didn't speak for 3 years. And then guess what happened? We became best friends. And as an honor to my father, after I met Tracy, the story I just shared with you, a year after I met her in the gym, I married her on my father's birthday. My brother came down from New York and married us. She was never married before. I had my marriage in the Catholic Church annulled because I was on drugs. So I got to marry the woman in the church of my upbringing. And my dad was my best man on February 11th, 2017. He took the microphone. There were 9 circuit judges at my wedding, the sheriff's family, all these prominent people. For a wretch like me who was homeless, who had 3 numbers in his cell phone at the time, my dad, my dope dealer, and a girl I was messing with. And now I have real friends, real beautiful relationships in my life. It's the most valuable thing. I have 8,000 contacts in my life. It's remarkable. 8,000. Truly remarkable. So my dad took the microphone on February 11, 2017, and he said words that were absolutely priceless. He said he was finally happy. He was finally at peace. That his son is clean and sober, has purpose at James Club, met this wonderful girl, Tracy. He said he was happy. His oldest son was happy. And then he said something I'll never forget. He goes, this program, James Club concept, gave him back his son. 2 weeks later, unexpected, on February 25th, in his sleep in the prayer position, he passed and he went home to the Lord. He was an older man and it was his time. And I'm going to honor my father's death by staying clean and sober and helping other alcoholics and drug addicts to achieve sobriety. And that's why I do what I do, to show Michael how grateful I was, to show my dad how grateful I was, and now my wife Tracy, but above all, God, for providing me this opportunity to have that purpose. So as crazy as it sounds, Dr. Keri, me being a drug addict and alcoholic and someone with lots of mental health issues is the greatest thing that ever happened.
I mean, that actually, you just sort of summed it all up, because one of the questions I often ask is, what circumstance that challenged you to the point of feeling like it was insurmountable that you actually overcame? What it taught you? And you just said it.
I think it's one too. There's a combination also, because it's really difficult for somebody, if you have a pretty good job, you pay your cell phone bill each month, you pay your rent, you're able to go out to dinner, and and for years and years you had a certain lifestyle. Then you become this senior vice president. They have this saying in AA, you go from Park Avenue to Park Bench. So for me to be where I was at, and then in January of 2010, I couldn't afford a McDonald's hamburger. I'll never forget a blind man the day before I got clean. Like, nothing happens in God's world by mistake. A blind man came off the bus on Atlantic Boulevard in Pompano, and I'm drinking at 10 o'clock in the morning a warm Steel 211 beer. Most disgusting beer. It's the highest content of alcohol. Every street person knows about Steel 211s. And I'm drinking it very slowly, because as a good alcoholic, you want to ration it. And I on purpose would not eat food because I wanted to try to catch a buzz. So there I was drinking the alcohol, and across the street, I saw this man come out of McDonald's with his son, and he was eating an ice cream, and it looked so beautiful. I'm looking at the warm beer and I'm watching them eat the ice cream. They threw the ice cream in the garbage. And when no one was looking, I took the ice cream out of the garbage. It was only a little bit left. And it was so delicious. And then the blind man comes off the bus. And he must have sensed me. Excuse me. I'm like, yeah. Can you help me cross the street? He says to me. I'm like, I want to help you, right? And there I was. I hid my beer behind a tree. And I'm like, all right, fine. And I put him on my elbow, and I crossed the street with the blind man. And he goes, can you open the door for McDonald's for me? I said, sure. And I do. And he looks at me and he says to me, thank you so much, Sonny. Is there anything I can do? And I buy you something in McDonald's? And I looked at him and I said, would you buy me an ice cream? I just remember that story. And it was amazing. You know, just all these little blessings. I don't take the bus anymore. I have a car. I don't rent anymore. I have a modest house. I'm the owner of the James Club. I don't make what I used to make, but I've never been happier.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's so striking that you did a service for that blind man. You know, he asked you and you didn't really want to, but you did it. You did it anyway. And then that to me is like the first little spark of light that lets you know, hey, you know what? There's something here for you. There's something here for you in terms of what you give and what you bring and then what you get back. And
good observation.
Yeah.
I thought of that before.
Oh, yeah.
After I crossed the street with him and I opened the door, it felt great. I felt so happy for a second.
You were aware of that. You were aware of that. And so from my perspective, outside looking in, that's the spark where suddenly you're like, well, I feel good. I did something. And now I feel good. Okay, so now we put those two things together, which beautifully mirror the acts of service that you encourage the residents of James Club.
It's one of the 7 S's service. Yeah, it's just really important.
So, Ray, as I see you, symbolically to me at least, you are a light. You have this candle with this beautiful light, and you're available to light everybody else's candle. And it doesn't take away from the light that you hold. It only expands it. And that to me is the essence of what you do. And so thank you for illuminating the world with your wisdom and with your service. And I can't wait to see what's next for you.
Thank you for having me. It was a real honor.
Thank you.